We will begin with introductions and opening statements from each of tonight's candidates, followed by tonight's debate rules. We will begin with Mr. Verone Thomas. Verone is a Lake Charles resident who has entered the presidential race as a result of his disappointment with this country's infrastructure and tax system. He believes the time has come for Americans to stop electing the same politicians from the same two parties, and he urges everyone to follow him in his quest to take the country in a new direction. Mr. Verone Thomas.
As we stand in unity for the uplifting of our nation, there's no doubt in my mind that the citizens of America require of us to speak the words that best explains the mutual concerns of this nation. It's indisputable that the truth without a reservation is required for the immediate restoration for what we consider to be prosperity in this nation. It's valuable to believe that the only possible way of achieving success in these endeavors that we've created is by coming together and speaking our mind during these difficulties. To ignore the rise in taxes compared to the decline in income would be fatal to the recovery of the economy for which we all contribute. Our infrastructure is crumbling, and it's time to put America's homeland security in the forefront as a priority. So I challenge every mind that can comprehend the words that we are saying today to come together for the presentation of calculated solutions instead of adding to the saturations of problems that we already have. We need brand new, fresh ideas from every citizen who has a dream for this land. But not just any old dream, that American dream. That dream that says your future, my future, our future is secure. Thank you. My name is Verone Thomas, and I'm a candidate for President of the United States of America.
Our next candidate, Chris Kennison, is a former U.S. Air Force instructor who holds a Bachelor of Science degree in professional aeronautics. He is a certified maintenance and reliability professional who has led corporate efforts focusing on equipment maintenance and reliability and industrial health and safety. Mr. Kennison has served as a Louisiana State Chair and Texas Member at Large and National Secretary for the Veterans Party of America.
Thank you. My name is Chris Kennison, and I am the nominee from Veterans Party of America. We are a solutions-based, centrist political party established in December 2013. We are committed to restoring a representative government with ethical representatives who actually do speak for the people. We are committed to good constitutional solutions. We are committed to restoring the America that the Constitution promises each of us. We are intended to be a country of pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. The federal government's responsibility is to ensure that we have the freedom to do so. Unfortunately, over time, the two political parties currently in power have sought to use our mandates for things that we do not necessarily agree with as a people. So we are here this evening in a spirit of unity to present different solutions, real solutions to the problems that face all Americans. Thank you.
Our next candidate, Dr. Lynn Kahn. Dr. Kahn received her PhD in clinical psychology from the American University in Washington, D.C. She has 32 years experience as an organizational psychologist inside federal agencies, including 6.5 years at the White House Partnership to Reinvent Government. Her platform is to focus on fixing government and building peace. Her goals include 25 million new jobs, clean energy, and honoring our commitments to our veterans.
Thank you. I am Dr. Lynn Kahn. I'm an independent candidate for President of the United States. I have a very clear platform. Fix government, build peace. Fix our broken government, agency by agency, build peace here at home and around the world. And I have a 7-track plan to do just that. I'm not a politician. I'm an organizational psychologist. I work inside federal agencies for 32 years, including 6.5 years on the White House Partnership to Reinvent Government. I understand federal agencies. I understand the mechanics of federal agencies. I know how to look under the hood. I know what works, what doesn't work. I know what changes to make. I know how to redefine the mission, the priorities, the activities of every agency. I know how to move funding from where it's going now to something that matches the priorities of the American public. I know agencies. I have a 7-track plan to accomplish what I'm saying. Track 1 is cut $1 trillion of waste out of our bureaucracies. Track 2 is multiply solutions. Track 3 is reinvent every agency starting on day 1 with the Departments of Justice, Education, and Veterans Affairs. Track 4 is build partnerships. Track 5 is communicate honestly. Track 6 is measure the truth. Poverty in America is not 14 or 15%, it's 34%.
That
Track
is our
7,
time.
build peace here at home and around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kahn. And now introducing John Fitzgerald Johnson. Mr. Johnson is a veteran and ordained minister, and as an information technology architect, he supports Fortune 500 corporations nationwide with cutting-edge technology. Mr. Johnson is also a recording artist and activist, and he believes we are one nation and that only we can fix us. John Fitzgerald Johnson.
First, let me thank all of my esteemed colleagues who thought it not robbery to come here to Lake Charles, Louisiana, while the rest of the country is distracted by the circus that our political process has become. And I thank you all for taking the time out to come here. I truly mean that. I believe that the problem in this country is that those folks who are empowered to fix those problems that we are living through are not being afforded the opportunity to fix them. So when I say that only we can fix us, I am not talking about a selective demographic. That is someone that agrees with my ideals. I mean that all of us who make up the patchwork of America, irregardless of race, color, creed, religious background, persuasion, or sex, that unless we all come to the table and begin to hammer out, just as the founding fathers of this nation did, an agreeable platform, a course of action, deliverables, and a plan, that we are headed in a circle that has been repeated time and time again in multiple societies. Whether it has been my time on the battlefield, my time behind the pulpit, my time on stage making millions of dollars, my time sitting in corporate boardrooms with some of the biggest government contractors on the planet of the earth, or leading the Black Lives Matter movement with thousands of people behind me. I had to have the epiphany and the revelation that the only way that we are going to move forward is if one of us avails ourselves to the office of the presidency. And that is why I believe that only we can fix us. Thank you.
Our next candidate is Robert Dionisio. He is one of the top-ranked global developers of companies and projects in the world. He has a 30-year track record of executive leadership, having begun his career with the Bechtel Group. Mr. Dionisio was awarded the Medal of Freedom by President George W. Bush and was an active member of the U.S. Senate Inner Circle Presidential Roundtable.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished moderator, Ms. Simeon, and citizens of Lake Charles, Louisiana. First of all, thank you for hosting this truly historic debate. I've launched a mission to unite, renew, and build an exciting new future for America based on visionary leadership and a defined implementation plan. In order to achieve unprecedented economic prosperity, social reformation, and global peace. I'm an independent candidate without financial affiliation to any incumbent party, special interest group, or foreign entity. In order to stop government from infringing on constitutional rights, trampling economic prosperity, and the social-economic free-fall decline I've witnessed over the past 3 decades. Legacies of value are earned by American heroes, not politicians who are the hardworking families of this nation. America is comprised of champions and leaders across the spectrum of society, of all races, religions, and financial status, who are rising up to join us, based on world-class performance goals, not false promises, and adding value and economic incentives, not micromismanagement. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "There comes a time when silence is betrayal," and I could not agree more. The time has come to act. As your president, I will lead America's future prosperity and growth to likes of which this country has never seen, and I will not rest until our goals are accomplished. Thank you.
Our next candidate is Val Kiddington. Mrs. Kiddington graduated with an MBA in 2011 and is a military veteran. At one time, she lost the ability to walk, but she persevered and today walks just fine. Ms. Kiddington has served as a college educator and the executive director of a nonprofit children's organization. Val Kiddington.
Hi, thank you. Hi, I'm Val Kiddington, and I'm going to be the first woman president of the United States. I have 2 master's degrees. I've served in the military. I have an MBA. As business leaders know, an MBA is prerequisite to manage anything in this country. The Democrat and Republican frontrunners don't have an MBA. They don't have the military experience, and they're not going to work for the country because, as you know, the millionaires, after the election, they don't work for the American people. Our economy is in trouble, and the Democrats keep adding heavy debt to the situation, and the Republicans want to cut all the poverty programs. I disagree with both of them. I want to cut big government and bureaucracy. I want to focus on recovering jobs and job security. I want to lower business tax and repatriation tax. I want to take care of the veterans. I've already issued a plan 3 years ago to close the border to handle that situation. I would bring it into the war concerning terrorism. And also on domestic issues, I'm pro-life and women's rights. So equal wages for women, paid maternity leave, right to self-defense, removal of the marriage penalty. I'm pro-life, pro-gun, pro-social security, that means no privatization, pro-America, pro-Israel, and I do believe in upholding the United States Constitution. So if you want a female conservative, I am a Republican, a card-carrying Republican, but if you do want a female president, instead of caucusing Clinton, caucus Val Kiddington, go to your normal caucus and caucus Val Kiddington. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Introducing our next candidate, Rhett Rosenquist Smith. Mr. Smith says he's committed to making the voices of the American people heard on Capitol Hill. He believes the two-party political system has abandoned the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rhett Rosenquist Smith.
Thank you, Ms. Simeon, and thank you for the forum tonight from the independent presidential debate. It's so important that this First Amendment freedom, how are we doing this tonight? In some places around the world, this would not be allowed. So I really want to champion the First Amendment. That's what we're doing tonight, taking advantage of that. freedom of speech, freedom to assemble. But this campaign is about more than myself. It's about more than Rhett for president. It's about the libertarian values, the libertarian principles, the libertarian ideals that predated the American Revolution. So I want everyone tonight to get on their educational hat, to get on their history lesson, and go look at the history of the American Revolution. Go look at the libertarian thinkers that were instrumental in building the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We have abandoned those. We have abandoned this in our foreign policy. We have abandoned this here at home. When we abandon freedom, when we abandon the principles that established this nation, principles that were respected around the world, the libertarian thinkers were Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, Patrick Henry, so many thinkers and thinkers before them. We don't do that anymore. These predated the political parties that now have abandoned the principles because the political parties care not about the American Revolution, care not about, our basic libertarian values and principles that are enumerated in the Bill of Rights. Thank you.
Our next candidate is Mr. Terry Wheelock. He believes his life experiences, including living abroad, combined with his faith, education, experience in the aerospace industry, and his service in the U.S. Air Force, have all prepared him to be president. He has also represented the U.S. in international competitions and feels that has helped instill in him the wisdom to serve in the White House. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Terry Wheelock.
Thank you. My name is Terry Wayne Wheelock. I am the independent candidate for President of the United States 2016. I'm the best choice for president because I can serve the people, represent the people, and restore and protect the freedom and individual rights of the people over all else. That is what this country is founded on, freedom. And I will put forth every power of the presidency to bring forth the freedom and individual rights of all Americans. Thank you.
Now that we have met all of our candidates, here are tonight's debate rules. I will ask questions that were pre-selected and submitted to me. We will not take questions from the audience. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer each question. Should a candidate answer a question with a reference to another candidate who is present, the candidate who was referenced gets 90 seconds to respond. We will end tonight's debate with closing statements from each candidate. Our first question tonight: why are you running for President of the United States, and what makes you the best candidate? We will start with Mr. Keniston.
Why am I running for President of the United States? Most specifically because I am an average American, a veteran who is tired of not being represented. I am tired of a federal government who campaigns on things that are important to me, makes promises they don't keep, uses their authority to reward corporate donors and special interests at my expense. That's why I got involved with Veterans Party of America, because it was the first political party in my lifetime I had ever found that I fully identified with. When they offered me their nomination, I accepted it. I never set out to be a politician. I don't consider myself a politician. I'll accept statesman, but really, all I am is a representative. I am offering to be your representative as a working, middle-class American who is concerned about the infringement of civil liberties, the continuous encroachment of federal government, who simply wants the freedom to live their own life without any interference.
Thank you, and now we will have the answer from Dr. Khan. Why are you running for president, and what makes you the best candidate?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I chose to run for president for two reasons. First, I understand government agencies. I understand the mechanics of government agencies. I know how to look under the hood. I can see what doesn't work. For example, how can one department, the U.S. Department of Energy, possibly balance responsibilities for nuclear weapons and leadership to move this nation towards 100% clean energy? It's not possible. So understanding that kind of internal contradiction is an important piece of understanding how to make government actually work. Another example, when I read the mission of the U.S. Department of Justice, 3 words pop out at me: control, enforcement, and punishment. That mission statement will never help us deal with the issues of mass incarceration, the school to prison pipeline, and the damage that the Justice Department has done to communities of color throughout this country. Another example, the U.S. Department of Education. It has a $70 billion budget. I understand $38 billion goes to the states. What are they doing with the other $42 billion? There's questions that we have to ask. The second reason is that I understand peace building. I published my first book on peacemaking, and that is part of my platform that drives me to run for president. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas, why are you running for president, and what makes you the best candidate?
I'm running for president to put America back on the pedestal that it once was on. I actually decided to put my hat in the race after the Trayvon Martin case. I realized at that point that America was heading backwards. We tend to send forces overseas to Iraq, to Iran, Syria, Libya, and we sending them there to establish democracy in their land and create a sense of freedom for their citizens. And I realized at that time that we didn't have anybody representing us on the home front. And I respect all the politicians that have, that are in our government, but at the same time, I realized in Sanford there was no representation there. This was an election year where all the candidates was campaigning, and nobody was speaking to that crowd and speaking to the minds of that crowd and answering their questions. So I decided to get in the race and concentrate on America. The infrastructure in America is crumbling. Our railroads, our roads, highways, our pipes are bursting. And if you look at what's happening in Flint right now, that can easily be right here in Lake Charles or any other city. With the water situation, with drinking with lead in the water, and thousands of people getting sick from lead poisoning. That can be anywhere in America. So that lets me know that America needs to be looked at seriously.
Mr. Johnson, your reason for running for president and what makes you the best candidate?
It would be remiss of me to continue and not allow someone who drove all the way from Los Angeles to be here tonight. Literally drove, didn't hop on a plane, came here to be in the debate. Sister Carrie from the Green Party, who has just arrived, so I wanted to give her a chance to get in and get seated. Welcome. I'm glad you made it. To effect change, to combat the ills that are infecting this great nation of ours in so many ways, whether it's from the immigration problem that everyone tends to want to talk about, but nobody really wants to do anything about it. Some of these solutions that have been put forward are just downright ridiculous, if not almost reminiscent of what happened in Nazi Germany, all the way to dealing with some of the financial situations that have been perpetuated by the very financial structure that continues to profit off the back of the average American. To deal with some of the issues of police reform, to deal with some of the racial old wounds that have been reopened in this country. And in spite of all the prosperity that we have, yet we continue to have instances that show us that we've moved nowhere since the 60s. And to address some of the issues as we move further into longevity for those of us who are becoming seniors, to look at Social Security, to look at some of those ills that are plaguing the younger folks, student loan reform, but most importantly, to begin to utilize the resources of the United States, work across the aisles with all folks, irregardless of political persuasion, to reach consensus that the United States is already great, but just to take us into the next level of greatness. And that's why I'm running for president.
Mr. Dionisio.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the only thing larger than the near $20 trillion deficit in the United States is the leadership deficit in Washington, D.C., and within the Republican and Democratic parties right now. I'm running for president in order to renew and build a future for our children and country. Our education system, healthcare system, infrastructure, and economy have been devastated. Decade after decade after decade. Starting with policies back in the Bill Clinton days of repealing Glass-Steagall, instituting agreements with North Korea, and now we're faced with North Korea as our greatest threat to the United States. Institution of policies that are so harmful to our children and our communities, it's remarkable. Followed by 3 consecutive wars that have caused so much animosity towards America. I wonder how many people really know the true death toll of 9/11. I asked that question the other day in the speech in Orlando. Someone told me 3,000. No. The answer is 125,000 deaths. 3,000 was just that event. 7,000 to 8,000 on the wars from Afghanistan and Iraq alone. And since then, we've had 8,000 veterans commit suicide.
That's time.
We'll cover all this tonight and throughout the course of the year. Thank you.
Ms. Kiddington, your reason for entering this campaign for president and what makes you the best candidate?
Well, the reason I'm running is because I'm tired of seeing people up there that are not smarter than I am. I think in the race, even though some would dispute this, I think that myself and Trump are probably the most mature candidates that are capable of doing things and of administrating things and respecting, well, myself on this one, respecting the different communities and bringing them together. And I have a balanced policy that brings both Democrat interest and Republican interest together. And as well, if some of you have read up on me online, I've actually, in serving in the military, I did answer 3 a.m. calls for help. So I've actually accomplished and completed what Ms. Hillary Clinton was unable to do. So your sons and daughters serving overseas, their lives would be well in my hands, whereas if Ms. Clinton gets elected, where it looks like right now she will be, their lives will be at risk. I'm a responsible person as far as that goes. And I just believe that I'm the best candidate, and I can administrate. I think our government has become very sloppy, and I think the Republicans are distracted by business interests, which is why they haven't built up America and really brought it together. And I think the Republicans are the Democrats are just throwing money and promising things that they can't deliver, and they're not balancing interest and the needs of the people in their policies.
Mr. Smith, your reason for entering this race for President of the United States, and the qualities that make you the best candidate.
Thank you. I believe very strongly, I guess, in the American dream. And when I speak of that, I'm talking about the American Revolution. Again, getting back to what I consider the Libertarian Revolution. What motivated the framers, the founding fathers, so many years ago to engage, to risk their lives, their sacred honor, and their fortunes, building a revolution to try to change the world? And why have we abandoned that? I am a father and a grandfather. That is my most important function in life, to be a role model for my children and grandchildren. But I cannot do that when the values that we want for ourselves are abandoned in our foreign policy. They're abandoned here at home. If we really believe in freedom, why would we allow two parties to hold themselves up as exceptional or superior? I'm talking about the Republican and Democrat parties, to be superior to the rest of the human race. And how has that damaged our foreign policy? You know, we support people overseas that we do not understand, that are dictators, that are warlords, and then we wonder what's wrong with our foreign policy. What's wrong with our ideals that we've abandoned those values and freedoms and rights that we cherish, but we don't offer this worldwide? That's what we expect. That's what the world expects. That's what we expect for our children and grandchildren. Thank you.
Mr. Wheelock, your reasons for entering this race and why you feel that you are the best candidate.
The why is simply put forth to restore and protect the freedom and individual rights of all Americans equally over the wants and needs of the states, the government at hand, to provide a infrastructure and framework for peace and prosperity for all Americans. And I am the best candidate because I can see a complete, all-inclusive system that will bring all Americans together to restore freedom and individual rights as given by the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Why we are all here today. Thank you.
And now we will introduce our final candidate, allow her a minute and a half to give her opening statements, and then allow her another minute and a half to answer our opening question. Sitanam Curry of the Green Party brings broad international experience to her work in the U.S. and Africa. She has a 35-year track record in program and project management. She is a University of Southern California graduate and touts her vast experience in managing projects in a multicultural environment. Please give us your opening statements.
Good evening, everyone. I have to correct you, my sister. My name is Sudanam Kinamu Christian Moyawasife Curry.
I would have never gotten that out.
If you can say Schwarzenegger, you can say my name.
Oh, I don't know.
We've been too cultured into Europeanizing or Anglicizing who we are. I am unapologetically black and unapologetically green. I represent a global party. The Green Party is in 90 nations. We all agree to 4 pillars: ecological wisdom, social justice, nonviolence, and grassroots democracy. I am one of 5 candidates for our party, so I feel honored and privileged that I sit here representing Dr. Jill Stein. There are 2 female candidates for the Green Party, Dr. William P. Kimmel, Dr. Kent P. Mesplay, and Daryl Cheney. And I must say happy birthday to Daryl Cheney. He turned 60 today. Our state party got started in 1984, and they had tussles and disagreements about coming up with our 10 key values. You can look them up at gp.org. But those 4 pillars connect us globally. We're the only global political party. Here in the US, we are close to having 27 ballot lines. And I think everyone here knows that our system is set up for corporate parties the Republican and the Democrats.
That is
Okay.
your time for the opening
thank
statement.
you.
Now we will allow you to answer our opening question. Why are you running for president of the U.S. and what makes you the best candidate?
It's really simple. Because you talked about my experience living internationally, I see myself as a citizen of the world, first and foremost. And because I'm in the Green Party, ecological wisdom is important. Since 1945, our species, because we're all human, there's no races, there's one called human, and we are a biological species. What happens is that since 1945, our species has been able to kill itself. Is that an accomplishment? No. So I believe that the leadership of the Green Party and my involvement, living abroad internationally, living, working, and pushing for awareness is important. I mentioned 1984 that our party had a dialogue. They came up with those 10 key values. Our campaign is pushing our party, unlike other parties, to have a discussion about leading our nation. We came up with 3 additional key values. The 11th one would be ending white privilege and white supremacy. The 12th one would be ending all isms, be it race, sex, or whatever you want to call it, and then also ending capitalism. As a green person, I know that those 3 things have created the environment to destroy our earth. Thank you.
Thank you. Now moving on to our next question. We are living in chaotic conditions, and a leader must be able to operate under complex, uncertain circumstances. What are a few of the components of leadership that you possess that will make you effective? Mr. Kennison.
Well, I'd have to say that my diverse background, coming from really an upbringing of next to nothing in rural Pennsylvania, working with a lot of different people from different backgrounds, moving from that into the United States military, which is again a number of different people from different backgrounds. Really, those 13 years in the Air Force were what taught me how to put aside differences, whether they're ideological, whether they're lifestyle, whether their appearance, whether their faith, and focus on getting a job done. It's really more important to focus on what it is that you hope to accomplish and put aside those differences. And everything that I have done to this point professionally, even since I've left the military and worked in the corporate world, still, I work with a lot of different people with a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different beliefs. At the end of the day, we're all trying to accomplish one thing. And only our ability to set aside those differences and work together is what makes it happen. Growing Veterans Party of America has probably been the greatest challenge in that field because we're a centrist party. If you're left-wing, right-wing, liberal, conservative, it's real easy to identify with the people you agree with. But when you start trying to challenge government from the middle, you have to be able to work with everyone. You have no choice.
Thank you, Mr. Kennison. Dr. Khan, the leadership qualities that will help you navigate through these uncertain times we currently live in.
Thank you. Last year, starting on August 12th, and for 100 days until November 19th, I drove around America. I drove 14,128 miles, and I did a lot of listening to a lot of people. And I learned, first of all, that talking about a broken government that truly needs transformation made sense to a lot of people. I also understood that folks are ready to think about our role on this planet as something other than a nation that is constantly invading and using aggression to solve international problems. I also realized, listening to everyone, that there's something really wrong with the measures that government is typically putting out there and reports that are being made. Unemployment in America is not 5%, it's sometimes 10%. There are communities where it's 40%, 60%, 80%. Poverty in America is not 15%, it's 34%. That means 100 million Americans are struggling with poverty every single day. So I think that understanding all the different levels at which our government operates and all the different ways in which the federal government can be changed and waste taken out to truly serve Americans are part of the reasons why I am running for president.
Mr. Thomas, what will make you an effective leader?
Basically, the citizens of America is not happy with the direction that this country is heading in. Our leaders, our elected leaders, is in the duopoly, and they're polarized more than ever. If the left says yay, the right says nay. And right now, our elected officials are being bought. Our government has been bought, and it's time for someone to get in the White House and really put their foot down about where big money is headed. Right now, in this duopoly, big corporations are spending millions of dollars to persuade legislation. So we have to get in the White House and direct and persuade our elected officials to actually work for America. Now, I've done 10 years in the United States Navy, and in the Navy, we didn't have time to worry about people who wasn't part of the solution, who wasn't a part of the team. We had to work together to get the mission done. And in the Navy, I was a leader in all those areas, so I believe that I will be the best candidate for President of the United States.
Mr. Johnson, what will make you effective as a leader for us?
And the qualities that make an effective leader are pretty cut and dry. The question is, does a person possess them? Of these that I'm going to talk about, I will talk about only the ones that I possess. The first one is, I understand the differences in different cultures. I have lived around the world. I spent 20 years in the military, and even now, I'm still employed around the world. The first thing that you have to have is the ability to understand cultural differences, and realizing that just because something doesn't fit into your puzzle doesn't mean that there's something wrong with it. The other thing is that I have built into me a steadfast resolve to stick to my guns once we have arrived at a logical decision, and not to be wishy-washy about it, and owning that decision, should it ever come into question later, whether it be by my constituents or by the very folks that are affected by it. Another thing that I possess that makes me a great leader is I possess the discipline, the logical thinking, the reasoning and thinking, and I'm open-minded at the same time to look at another person's perspective. I am not fixated on I'm always right. But if I have to go through a process that arrives at a logical conclusion, that's where we're going to go, unless someone can present a more reasonable alternative. Understanding intent versus impact. That no matter what our intentions were, whether as a nation or as a person, you cannot control the impact that it has on another individual or a country. And if you don't understand that, you can blunder into military situations or blunder into economical disasters. That's another quality that I possess. And finally, I would say the ability to use diplomacy versus strong-arm tactics in the world and within this country. Those are the qualities that I possess that make me a great leader.
Mr. Dionisio, what will make you an effective leader?
I believe leadership is for others to decide. I've been recognized since I was 9 years old. I started a recycling business. I led a team that hiked around the communities collecting fallen glass insulators, aluminum cans and glass bottles. And I would lead that team back to the local utility company, sold them for a few cents a piece into the local salvage shops, whatever they would offer. Ever since that time, whether it be buying my first condominium, my second year in college and renting the rooms out, to to other college students to help pay for my tuition and mortgage. Ladies and gentlemen, I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth like the current GOP leadership. And I'm not riding the coattails of a past president without any kind of track record in leadership. I've been a recognized leader my entire life, having worked with Bechtel, the largest global developer, engineer, and constructor in the world, building cities and countries, not hotels and casinos. There's a big difference when you look at the broad spectrum of the economy. We have complete incompetence in global business affairs. We have people that do not understand foreign policy. I've been to all of the countries that they discuss, and they are absolutely clueless. Anyone who thinks the Republican and Democrat Party represents the average American in this country is out of their mind.
That is time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Kiddington, the qualities you possess that will make you effective as a leader.
Well, I love America. I respect America. I respect American traditions. I respect the black community and I respect the white community. And I know that I can solve the problems. And I know that I have qualities and virtues beyond some of the other candidates that are running at this time. If you go to my website, kiddington2016.com, that's KITTINGTON 2016.com, you'll see even a comparison between myself and Fiorina, what people that have worked with her and for her and that she has worked for says about her as compared to what people have said about me, calling me business leaders, calling me a natural leader, an asset, that I move things forward. So I have the capacity and the capability to move things forward. I give attention to details and to every community and to all American citizens. And I believe that it is time for the people. And I love this country. I love the tradition of this country. I love the values of this country. And I believe in it. I believe in America. I think we are the greatest nation in the world. And I think we can continue to be. Right now we are faltering. The country is in trouble. That's why I'm stepping up to fight for my country, because I love my country. I am a patriot. And that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, why would you be an effective leader, an effective president?
Thank you. And I want to say first that I am from San Antonio, Texas. I don't think I've mentioned that, but I did serve in the United States Navy. I was educated at the University of Texas at Austin and worked for a time as an auditor accountant for the state of Texas. I've been over 30 years in the private security industry. And, but aside from my experience, I think it's so important that we have values and principles. And if we forget those values and principles, again, the libertarian ideals, the thinkers that formed the American Revolution, why can we look some other way? Why can we allow a two-party system to abandon what was a worldwide revolution, what people around the world are looking to America for? What do they expect? They didn't really expect a Republican and Democratic Party that were so caught up in their own control that they've abandoned what has been upheld as far as freedom, as far as the individual rights that we value in the Libertarian Party. The ideals that we're all created equal, that we should have the First Amendment freedoms, the freedom of religion, freedom of speech. They want to take away our guns and religion? What in the world is going on in America? Look at the Libertarian Party. I encourage you to go learn and educate yourself about the Libertarian Party. Thank you. Do I have more time?
No, that's your time. Thank you. Thank you for asking, though. Mr. Wheelock, what qualities do you possess that will make you an effective president?
Well, I am not a public speaker. I am not a public debater. All my life, I have been a very private person. but I have watched people and trying to achieve certain things. I've watched groups working against each other to achieve certain things, but I have always been drawn into creating a infrastructure or a pathway so they all can learn cooperation over competition to achieve the American dream. I would be a leader from behind. As a coach in gymnastics, it's not about the coach, it's about the gymnast. I would create the environment so the people can prosper, so they can chase their dreams, so they can go for their ideals without interference from special interests, lobbyists, government, or any other entity that would influence or betray that trust. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Curry, same question.
Moyawasife Curry.
Will you require us to call you that if you are elected president?
Say my name, by all means. I can say you are. It's so simple. I can teach everybody. Moyawasife. 5 syllables. Moyawasife.
Has our time started? You may proceed.
Respect and emotional intelligence. Being 54 years old from a family of 20 folks and living outside, I know how to respect others without disrespecting myself. As you see, I'm asking you to say my name because I would take time to learn anyone's name from whatever culture, religion, gender.
We did names during the sound check, which you were late for, and respect goes both ways. You could have been here on time for the sound check and you were not, and we excused you and allowed you a chance to catch up with all of the other candidates. So from here on out, I can refer to each of you as candidates 1, 2, 3, 4, so that all of you can have the same respect, if that is okay with all of you.
You're doing just fine. Please keep
Thank you very much. And now so that you can have all of your time.
I have 9 sisters. I'm one of 20, so I know how to deal with anybody. This, you asked a question, and emotional intelligence is something I bring to the table. I'd like to congratulate folks who talked about their strengths. It's really important that strength leads our nation and respect leads our nation. Also, in the Green Party, because we're a global party, I have challenged my party to end white privilege and supremacy. Every party and everybody needs to make their party better. When you do that, you show a level of maturity that you can deal with your own so that we move beyond ourselves. Someone mentioned that. Thank you.
And now our next question. Please identify what you feel are the major issues impacting our nation's schools and what you will do to give our children a better educational future.
Education is personally my most important platform point. I am a parent. I have lived in both Common Core states and non-Common Core states, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that the Common Core curriculum is a disservice to the education of American children. I've experienced the differences. I've been the one sitting at the table helping with homework, trying to understand the insanity of the logic applied. The abandonment of the enriching curriculum that most of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s received. The abandonment of the arts, the abandonment of technical fields, of vocational training. We now have a generation of children who hits the workforce. If they're not prepared to continue on to college, they have no skills. Minimum wage, fast food jobs, menial labor is all they're qualified to do because they don't know anything else. We have done a real disservice to the children of our nation and to ourselves with what we have allowed to occur to education in this country. And I have said, I am on record, it is in my platform, I will not unpack a suitcase in the White House before Common Core is terminated.
Dr. Khan, the major issues impacting our nation's schools and what you will do to give our children a better educational future.
Thank you. I think there's two ways to talk about education. One is the visionary piece. However it is that we talk about creating a 21st century economy, whether there's, and I believe there are green energy piece, there's a 21st century infrastructure piece that needs to be created, there's a 21st century housing policy, 21st century health policy and strategy, including regular people being able to afford health care. For me, education is the foundation, and responsive education is the foundation. So it's a piece of every single thing that we need to do to move forward. The more detailed piece of that are the ways in which the U.S. Department of Education has failed this nation for decades. So I'm personally appalled at the waste of money, and I mean tens of billions of dollars are wasted on programs in the U.S. Department of Education that have absolutely no results. So as we share a lot of ideas. We're all independents. We all feel we have a lot of the passion about what needs to happen in our country. As we think about the very specific things that need to happen to make our educational systems better, we need to pull the money out of the federal agency and push it back towards the states and give the states more power, give teachers more time, more training, and help our students support a 21st century economy.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. Mr. Thomas, what do you see as our school's biggest problems, and what do you plan to do to make things better for our children?
Well, it is said that the combination of education and hard work is the key to success. But however, there's many roadblocks that affects that traditional equation. I agree that Common Core needs to be brought back to the drawing board and work out a few issues with it. There's a few complications with it, but I believe that Common Core goal is to put all students on the same level throughout the country. But however, the curriculum that is being taught is controversial. A lot of the math equations and how it's taught in the classroom is not holding up to what we all know as tradition. So I believe that the object of Common Core is, I believe is great. I believe that, we want every student to be able to compete with other students around the world and around the country. But at the same time, we want to make sure that the curriculum that they are being taught is not hindering them to be able to be effective at their best. Right now, the education system is at $1 trillion in debt, and we need to address that issue where we could actually we need to address the issue where we can actually help student debt decrease in this country.
Thank you very much. Mr. Johnson, what do you see as our nation's biggest problems with our schools, and what do you plan to do to make things better?
I've stated this on my platform. I'll state it here again, and I've heard this several times, but as your president, the first thing I would do is I would abolish Common Core, point blank period. We have to redefine the mission of the Department of Education. I would work along with them to redefine it. And we can start in a number of places. The restoring of funding for after-school programs, the restoring of programs that developed in the arts, as I've heard before, vocational music, things of those natures. Also, taking a hard look to abolish those systems that encourage the prison system to be profitable for those folks who flunk out or kicked out or simply pushed ahead and failed in the school system. Now that means that we're reducing the probability of moving numbers to schools based on tests. Also supplementing pay and funds to the state-run schools and the reduction of voucher programs that encourage folks to take their kids out of those schools. Also, a reduction of what I call returning to revisionist history, which is being taught to children. Let's get back to the basic of teaching facts. And also, most importantly, giving them teaching tools that make these students valuable to the U.S. economy. Who cares if you can tell me about astronomical physics and engineering and whether or not black holes exist on the subliminal plane, but you can't balance a checkbook? Back to the basics.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dionisio?
Ladies and gentlemen, on January 1st, 2014, I launched the United Party, which is sweeping across America at historical record pace. We've established U.S. goals supported by legislation. One of the legislative acts that I'm proposing is the United Education Act. We ranked 20th of the top 20 developed countries evaluated. We're last. We're 22nd in science and 27th in math. The Education Act is going to be driven through Congress. I've had enough of the appeasement policies, enough social degradation policies. We've abandoned our urban schools and public schools in this country. That is why we cannot get out of the situation that we're in here. Basically, it includes so many elements, but I'll just touch on a few briefly. One is to bring in management consultants. And rather than abolish the Department of Education, we're going to make it work more efficiently and for the people. We need a bully-free, drug-free, gun-free zones for our children to go to school. When I walked through the communities of this country, in New York City and Chicago, it's unbelievable. It's complete abandonment. We're going to eliminate college debt. College debt is basically financed by vultures, and it's impossible for children to pay these debts down. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't support our children, and education is where we need to focus, and that's what I'm going to do as president. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Kiddington, tell us what you feel are our biggest issues with our nation's schools and what you will do to eliminate those problems.
I think the major issue with the nation's public schools is lack of responsibility of the federal government for the public schools. It's a matter of escaping to come up with voucher programs and charter schools. I love charter schools, and vouchers are fine. But I think to take full responsibility for the public schools and the quality of the public schools, and to bring the education system up entirely with the basic skills, math, science. Even Stephen Hawking said that everyone needs to have a basic understanding of science in order to protect us in the future. Really practical skills so that a person, upon leaving high school, can find work, can find a job, and they don't have to subject themselves to the high cost of college. Which even with that, I know some Democrats want to pay for college, and I approve the Pell Grants. I would keep the Pell Grants. But what the college system does is it games the system. We have a 4-year system. We have the Pell Grant, which pays for the first 2 years, but the first 2 years basically repeats high school courses. So they're forcing you to go to 4 years or to go to 5 years, and they'll just keep gaming the system and getting away with it if somebody doesn't address it and nail it down and say no more gaming the system. Yes, the Pell Grants will be there for the students that need them, but we're going to pack quality in K through 12 and make those systems work most effectively.
And now we'll hear from Mr. Smith.
On the same question, the big issues affecting our schools.
Yes, sir.
And how would I improve that?
Yes, sir.
First of all, let me say that I did lobby my own Texas State Board of Education and formed an organization, Veterans for Education Reform. And what was that about? I felt that the First Amendment had been abandoned. So I think that until we're willing to respect people from around the world, different religions and different cultures from around the world, diversity and pluralism is what we should be learning. This is the way to improve our planet, improve the human race. So that would be number one. Number two, I would refer you to the Virginia Statute on Religious Freedom, authored by Thomas Jefferson before the First Amendment. And the apology, the state of Virginia apologized for slavery and for treatment of Native Americans. All 50 states should do the same thing. Our government should do the same thing. What happened, before the Civil War was a crime against humanity. Who is going to stand up and say, let's be responsible for what happened and let's acknowledge it? And finally, when we have a culture of colonialism, that is our history, that is what we uphold in our schools and some of our educational, we need to understand the indigenous culture. This is an indigenous planet. We learn from the indigenous people throughout the world. These are the people that were before civilization that are still here that we can still learn from. And also our state's abuse and we put children in solitary confinement and force them to take mind-altering drugs.
That is your time.
We are killing ourselves.
Thank you. And now an answer from candidate Wheelock. The major problems affecting our schools and how you will eliminate those problems.
Okay, from the beginning of existence until each passing day, the knowledge and information available to the general public is growing geometrically. So, it is impossible to teach our students every fact and knowledge and every solution. What we need to focus on is the minimum national educational standards so teachers can get back to teaching. And so they are not creating smart kids, which they know a lot of information, but they're creating intelligent kids who know what to do with that information. So we come back to, we are just not robots, but we are artificial or intelligent robots, if you want to put it that way. But also at the same time, I am not a promoter of STEM, I'm a promoter of esteem. Science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. Because nothing gets done until the pretty picture is drawn for everyone.
Thank you, sir. Same question for our first candidate.
Thank you. Capitalism breeds the negativity within children, so ending capitalism would be critical. There are best practices in helping children. I'm a Head Start baby. The government has not failed completely. Head Start is a great program. The third thing would be cultural competence. Several people highlighted on that. How many of us learned Columbus sailed the ocean blue? We didn't learn that Columbus went to Ghana, raped and robbed, came over here and did the same thing. We got to stop lying. Integrity is critically important because you have children living lies. There was a study released 6 weeks ago that a number of European older gentlemen are dying. The reasons are social science. If you create a lie and people can't achieve that myth, then they collapse or commit suicide. So honesty, integrity, and redesigning our education to reflect the realities of our world and definitely of our nation. Our nation is browning. We gotta get to understand that. By the end of this century, am I wrong? No. Okay, so we gotta understand and help train and lead so that we have a nation that is like a fabric. That one thread, if one thread pulls out of something you have on, everything can collapse. So it's critically important. Like Dr. Khan, I went on a campaign around the nation for 40 days, and I asked people, what is the criteria for a leader that you want for your president? Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. And now on to our next question. What do you declare to be your top 3 priorities should you be sent to the White House?
I'm going first again?
Yes, sir.
All right.
You're a leader.
Do you have a problem with that?
No, ma'am, I just don't know what to expect. All right. Look, the top three
Your top 3
areas-
priorities.
The top 3 areas that I want to focus on with my campaign are unity, security, and opportunity. We are a nation so utterly and deeply divided right now divided by our skin color, by our faiths, by our lifestyle choices, by politics. And we are all, as a society, the victims of a very effective divide and conquer strategy employed by the two parties and furthered by the media for the express purpose of keeping us subdivided into smaller and smaller and smaller, less politically influential groups, so that they can divide us up between the two of them, cast off the people that don't fit, and retain the power that they've enjoyed for this long. We are a constitutional centrist party, and I am a constitutional centrist candidate because I honestly believe that all the answers that we need to find to fix the problems in this country begin with honoring, abiding, and following the Constitution.
Thank you, sir. And now for your top 3 priorities if sent to the White House.
Thank you. I have a vision for America that begins with this. My vision is an America that works for everyone with no one left out. So as I think about what actions, what 3 priorities would support that mission, I come back to number 1, because we all have grand goals and vision and all kinds of wonderful ideas. How are we going to pay for it? There's hundreds of millions of dollars of waste in our government. It's appalling. You read about it in the paper all the time. So I come back to the Constitution gives Congress the power over tax policy and budgets and trade policy. And with this Congress, it'll take years before we get any money to do anything that needs to be done in this country. So my first thing is to start us on a track of reclaiming the wasted dollars. My second priority is to really rethink the purpose of every single one of our departments and agencies, because it's broken. It's disconnected from what people want. In some ways, some of the departments and agencies, it just doesn't even make sense. What I said about energy being both responsible for nuclear weapons and green energy can't happen. And the third thing is to put in place a doctrine for foreign policy that recognizes we have to balance the brilliance of our military with the wisdom of peace building.
Thank you. Your top 3 priorities, Mr. Thomas.
Number 1, my first priority would be to end mass incarceration. With the 13th Amendment in the Constitution, slavery was abolished, but they left a loophole in there. Basically, if someone goes to prison, then they could lease them out, and they could work for basically what we call slave wages. So I believe mass incarceration is modern day slavery. Right now, we have 2.2 million people in prisons and prisons for profit. Right now, our corporations profit from individuals that are locked up, such as GEO, Corrections Corporation of America, and also like Global Intel, who makes $500 million a year off of just phone calls from prisoners. So I would first stop the privatization of prison system. And second of all, I'm really big on infrastructure. I plan to spend at least $200 billion a year fixing our infrastructure. Right now, our trains are moving like molasses. You look at places like Japan, you got the maglev. I want to go beyond the maglev, like the Hyperloop, and we want to be able to bring our infrastructure into the future and not just equal with the rest of the world.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Johnson, your top 3 priorities.
My top 3 priorities upon entering the White House, as they say, a presidency is normally defined by the first 100 days. Believe it or not, as an independent, by virtue of the fact that I'm sitting in the White House, I guess my first action would be campaign reform and changing the rules so that folks like us who will come behind me will have the ability to also get to the White House. That will probably be the first thing I do day one when I sat down, and the abolishment of the Commission on Presidential Debates. Number one. Number two is what actually spawned me in the first place is an immediate addressing, whether it be through congressional action or through execution of presidential executive authority, police reform, outlawing racism. And when I say outlawing it, the same way they did in Germany. When I lived in Germany, you could not talk about the Nazis, you could not display the swastika, you couldn't have a slur of that type. It was illegal. So we would have to make racism in this country as it's being manifested illegal. And if I have to use executive authority, I would do it. But then again, of course, another part of that would be the legalization of certain substances that would give us an immediate tax boom in this country, the same way that we lifted prohibition and turned it one of the most destructive drugs in this country and made a profit off of it. Immigration reform, you don't deport millions of people who are already here, you turn them into effective taxpayers.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dionisio, give us your top 3 priorities.
My top 3 priorities are, first of all, it's called STOP, Strategic Terrorist Offensive Program. I've designed a program to eradicate terrorism based on a total misrepresentation of our dealings with foreign governments. We need an elite coalition of intelligence capability combined with Interpol and global military operations. The reason I use the word offensive is because we have to go after the core problem, and we can't wait any longer. ISIS has infiltrated every state in the United States, and it's become not only an emotional drain, but it's our largest threat to our national security. Anyone who thinks that they're the JV team, it's the largest financed Middle East terrorist group in the world. And there's 5 more right behind them. We need a program, ladies and gentlemen, that eradicates this. Economic growth and expansion is my second priority. We need to go from 2 to 6% growth. Leadership and unification is my third.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Kiddington, your top 3 priorities.
My top 3 priorities are national security, dealing with the war on terrorism, putting an actual strategy to it, because those are our men and women over there, and their blood counts, and we really need to get a handle on the situation. My second priority is jobs, job security. I would turn back refugees and illegals for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that basically these people are dumped into the barrios and into the black communities, and they overwhelm the communities that are already struggling. They don't go to the gated communities, they go to where regular Americans are. And the other thing, the illegals and refugees, they don't have a right to purchase a firearm. The Constitution is not enjoined to them. They are not automatic citizens. So I would turn that back to protect our nation and our nation's workers and their communities instead of overwhelming those already struggling. My third priority is to get the veterans situated, and I already have a plan for that I'm really looking forward to putting into place. And that's pretty much, that covers it.
Thank you, ma'am. You are not required to use up all of your time. That is just a courtesy we are giving you, but if you can finish early, that is not taken against you. That you will not be penalized for not using all of your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, your top 3 priorities should you be elected to the White House.
Thank you very much. How much time do we have on this question?
You have a minute and a half, 90 seconds.
Yes, okay, the top 3 priorities. I'm glad we have mentioned veterans. I think that our veterans have always been abandoned. When you look historically, we do not know how to reach out to our veterans, how to help our veterans. We expect them to go risk their lives and lose their lives sometimes, but when they come home and they're broken and they need help, we want to set them aside. We don't want to, put them as our top priority. But of course, my number 1 priority, always freedom and liberty. We have abandoned that since the American Revolution. Number 2, communication, more interactive groups with, town hall meetings, actually private and public investment in technology. We are supposed to have the best computers and the best technology for telecommunications in the world, but we don't use it. Why aren't our citizens, voters, and taxpayers involved in our decision making? They could be involved every single day at the local and state governments. And finally, that's what I would do, is empower our local and state governments, helping them to put in check the power of the president and the federal government, and find more and more ways to empower other people, so that the president has just, under the 2-party system, has gained way too much power. Why do we have to keep supporting this system that really one person just doesn't have the capability to deal with billions of people around the world and all the myriad of problems that face us on a daily basis? Is that it?
That is your time. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Wheelock, your top 3 priorities.
Well, there are really not my priorities. I would address all the priorities of all Americans. Okay, I would start with the top 10 of what Americans want addressed. Okay, but as far as 3 that I have come up with just to begin with, is I would, again, simply restore the freedom and individual rights of all Americans equally. And that will create a framework so people can create businesses, so people can create jobs. And I would eliminate taxation so people would have the funding. I would create the Office of Operational Funding to create the infrastructure we need as all Americans to move or implement our freedom and individual rights. The second thing I would deal with is cut fraud, waste, and abuse at all levels of government, period. Okay? The third is security, at home and abroad. Security for at home, so we all have the ability for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Abroad, ISIS, the next Hitler. We will deal with that. It's not an issue. It's all about what will happen after we remove that threat. Will we create an environment so people around the world can have their freedom and their individual rights? It's an all-in-one process. We're not alone.
Thank you, sir. And now for our final candidate, what are your top 3 priorities?
There would be 4, based on the Global Green's understanding of the 4 pillars: ecological wisdom. In 100 days, we have the capacity as Americans and global citizens to come up with a way to end climate change. So under ecological wisdom, ending climate change. 2, nonviolence. Create a Department of Peace, and also help our military understand its role as bigger to protect us in terms of not fighting folks, but help us. So Department of Peace. The third would be under grassroots democracy. As Americans, it would be a historical, where do we want as Americans when we're 300 years old? That's less than 60 years away. No one has ever asked every American real questions. What do you want? What you like? What you don't like? How can we address you? I believe through doing a national and international surveys of American citizens, we would achieve what we need over the next 30 years. The fourth one would be social justice, ending white privilege and supremacy, ending all isms, and ending capitalism.
Thank you very much. Mr. Keniston, you are the only candidate who has not had a chance to thoroughly think about your answer, because you have been the first to answer every question thus far. So our next question, we will start with Dr. Khan. And that question is, if elected president, What action would you take on Obamacare, if any?
It is a good question. So I had the opportunity about 5 weeks ago to bring somebody to an emergency room, one of the only emergency rooms open in the northern suburbs of Washington, D.C. And there would have been a 4.5-hour wait. So I think there are many, I think it's great that more people have insurance, but we have reinvented insurance, not health care. We need to figure out ways to have greater access at a reasonable price to high-quality health care, and Obamacare has not done that. I talked to lots of people all over the country who told me lots of stories about great intentions, but the reality was the hospitals, the doctors, the clinics that they went to did not have the medication to treat them, did not have the resources, the health professionals there to treat them, and there were just people waiting in line, waiting in line. So I have a plan to start funding from day one, because I know where the waste is, and it's easier to cut programs that have no results than it is to change tax policy, to put 200,000 people into our public health system so that starting as soon as possible, there's more access to public health, quality public health.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Thomas, action that you would take on Obamacare or not?
Basically, I want to start off by saying two words, middle class. The middle class is the foundational support for the upper class and the motivation for the lower class. And right now, Obamacare has affected the middle class more than anybody. Higher premiums, deductions at $5,000, $6,000 before you can even get care. So I would bring Obamacare back to the drawing board and create a system that basically caters to all Americans and not just, don't get me wrong, we have to be considerate toward our seniors, our veterans, and basically we have to determine what care is needed at what level. And my plan is called MoCare. Minor care, major care, and MoCare. Minor care, you get to determine, okay, what coverage do you need? Minor care, we already know that children and pedicare is needed more than anything when it comes to insurance. And then major care is when you already know what your situation medically is. And MoCare is when you actually need the state and the federal government to actually come together and get you situated so you can qualify for major care.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Thomas, excuse me. Mr. Johnson, what action would you take, if any, on Obamacare?
Well, the Affordable Health Care Act, to tell you the truth, I wouldn't take any action against it. I think that it is actually President Obama's legacy, and it is something that they've been trying to do in this country for years. However, what I would do is the first thing I would do is I would begin to explore the impact of reducing the profits that Big Pharma makes off of drugs, the marketing of those drugs, and reducing the prices of those drugs. Because there would be a problem with Obamacare, or whatever you want to call it, if healthcare wasn't so expensive to start with, whether it be drugs or services. So there'd have to be some type of an exploratory committee to bring back that information so we could look at changing the regulatory laws to force the capping and the reduction of the prices of drugs and stop making the drug makers so profitable that we have to have these programs to start with. The other thing is not the touching of Obamacare, but the evolution into the universal health plan. The same way there are other countries where health care is provided to seniors, veterans, and so forth automatically, irregardless of some program or some rate that's actually been required of them. And last but not least, I would probably want to pursue a restructuring of the laws that govern the insurance agencies. So that those of us who are under certain federal programs, whether they be Medicare, Medicaid, and so forth, are not affected by the profit-making and price gouging that has become so prevalent in some of these major corporations. That is how I would respond to Obamacare.
Mr. Dionisio, the Affordable Health Care Act, what action, if any, would you take on it if elected president?
I would abolish Obamacare. Obamacare is a model for social economic failure. The United States is ranked 11th of 11 countries evaluated in health care. I would establish the United Health Care Act, which would involve universal health care, not a universal insurance program. It would be a two-tier system. One component of that would be similar to Medicare, and the other is by corporations to contribute to employees' health care benefits. A single-payer provider system is also a disaster for this country. We're $20 trillion nearly in debt, and all this does is continue to compound and compound. As part of our healthcare program, I have 4 cornerstones. And one of them, the primary one, is to target cancer and other terminal illnesses, a cure by 2025. And if we don't achieve that, our progress will still be remarkable. If we're going to be a great country, we have to set our goals high and target things like getting rid of the trans-Pacific pricing structure. We pay twice what any other country pays for drugs. We have hedge fund managers that are manipulating drugs that could be saving people's lives, and I would delve into all of these areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kiddington, what action, if any, would you take on Obamacare?
Yes, as a never-ending capitalist that I am, I believe in the free market system. So I will repeal Obamacare, and basically my take on it is universal health care, as even Hillary has cited, is kind of a throwback to President Johnson's Great Society plan, except with Hillary Care, it comes along with special interest lobbyists and investors, and it doesn't put the American citizen in first place. So it's basically kind of a scheme, trying to say. I also, not only do I disagree with the Democrats on universal health care, I disagree with the Republicans on health care. I disagree with health savings accounts. I don't think you should entrust big banks with your medical account either, because mysteriously pensions and other things seem to evaporate once they go into the banks. I do support private practicing physicians and surgeons. I do support free health care for children ages 12 and under. I do support taking care of the elderly and the disabled. And that's as far, I think everyone else, we have free choice to exercise. I don't know what happened, how we derailed into this situation, but a few years ago, we were all getting healthy. We were eating organic foods. Companies started changing. We were having a revolution. And even the First Lady started this Get Active thing. And now all of a sudden, everything's based on drugs and insurance and sickness. I don't know what happened, but I would like to take the trajectory back to organic living. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, would you do anything with Obamacare? If so, what?
Yes, excellent question, and thank you very much again. Basically, I certainly agree with the United States Supreme Court that said that citizens of the United States cannot be forced into a health insurance plan. And really, you have to think any insurance plan has got problems. It's kind of a Ponzi scheme where you're betting that, we have a pool of payers and then somehow we're all going to benefit. So certainly the government can raise or lower taxes for any purpose they want. So just instead of calling it insurance, let's just call it, we're going to raise your taxes for this reason. So I think we need more health communication. I think we need to really put pressure on the state and local governments to step up here and reform and improve what states that don't have quality health programs, they should be encouraged, find a way to help the 50 states. We have a system, federal, state, and local government system, we should use it. Instead of always looking to Washington, D.C., where how in the world are we going to have a program for 300 million people that even makes any kind of sense? This is a personal decision on health care, about the choices we make, the kind of health care we have, the doctors we like or want to choose. The federal government doesn't need to be involved in this. We can pay for more health care, but we don't need a national insurance program to get involved in that. We can deal with this at the state level.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
With all due respect to this panel and all of the esteemed colleagues here, abiding by the rules of this debate, I encourage all of my constituents to remember that we are not allowed to utilize cell phones or anything to pull our answers from other than our God-given brains if you're sitting on this debate stage. Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder. That was not something that I took notice of, but we will abide by all of the rules. We appreciate the reminder. And now, candidate Wheelock.
Not using that whatsoever.
I mean, I was just laying on the table. I wasn't referring to it.
Okay.
Thank you. Candidate Wheelock, now, if there is anything you would do with Obamacare, would you do anything, and if so, what would that be?
Unfortunately, I do not even recognize Obamacare. Obamacare is an abomination, okay? It is what we called in the Air Force a cluster, okay? Now, having said that, I do recognize affordable care for all. This is something that all Americans, regardless, you are brought into this world, you're going to need health care. So you need a universal, affordable, and available health care. For the majority of us, this will be through a public system, like Medicare. Medicare from the beginning of life to the end of life, okay? I would also give choice, not force people to pay for one thing. They have a choice to go for public or private health care plans. Veterans would be able to go to public health care or private health care or VA care, okay? I would eliminate Medicaid, because if we have affordable health care and universal health care for all, we don't need Medicaid. You don't need Obamacare. You can eliminate that and make Medicare the full-fledged medical care in America.
Thank you, sir. And I've been asked to remind members of our audience to please withhold any comments as to not interrupt our broadcast. Thank you very much. And now to candidate Moyowasisa Curry.
I really appreciate your effort.
I tried. Was I close?
You got it.
Thank you.
Just forgot the curry now. It's more you want to say curry. That's okay, I'm teasing.
What would you do, if anything, with Obamacare?
I'm against capitalism. So the one thing we would do as a party and as taking the White House have painted it green would be to make sure that there was universal health care. I concur with the folks who say that we need to take profit out.
Thank you very much. And now we will begin our next question with...
I have an answer.
Oh, that's right. We started with Dr. Khan. You are still here. Yes, Mr. Keniston. Please excuse me. I apologize.
That's all right. I got time to consider this answer.
Yes.
All right. I would not necessarily eliminate the Affordable Health Care Act. A lot of good things were put in place to help some people. I do not agree with, and I would not allow the individual payer mandate to continue. There is no constitutional basis for the federal government to tell me I must purchase a product. from private enterprise. None whatsoever. So either the government needs to come up with a solution for it, or they need to stop taxing me for not purchasing from the companies who donate to them. On that subject, pharmaceutical marketing in this country is insane. We are the only developed nation in the world that allows pharmaceutical companies to advertise on the news, on TV, in magazines. We have drugs pushed in our face every day. There's a reason for that. Guess who donates heavily to the two parties who write the legislation? I have been in a situation to have to depend on the exchange for health care. I went through a period of unemployment. During that period of unemployment, I made $800 a month, down from the $80,000 a year I had become accustomed to with a health care plan. We tried to get coverage for my wife. That would have cost us $475 a month just for her. So I was expected, because I made over $200 a month, to sacrifice $475 of my $800 just for health care.
That is your time.
That's not a problem.
Thank you, sir. And now we will begin with Mr. Thomas for our next question. Explain your position on gun control.
Gun control. I believe that there's been a lot of unnecessary deaths last year that have brought gun control into the forefront as an issue. My plan to solve gun control is pretty simple. Even though we cannot 100% stop all violence and all issues with gun control, there's a few things that we can do. First, we can do more extensive background checks. We could also have a system where the flags for mental patients can come up in doing those checks and purchases. And I also believe strongly that we have to move into the future with smart gun technology. Same way we got smartphones, okay? If with pistol grip recognition, if someone breaks in your house and steal your gun, they cannot use that gun in a crime because that gun will not recognize your hand grip. So that is my number one recommendation. I know a lot of gun activists who feel like it's going to be a burden on them, but I believe that it is the future, and I believe that it's made to protect them. Also, you've heard of children picking up guns and shooting other children. So I believe that the smart gun technology will help us minimize those type of accidents.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, share with us your position on gun control.
As I've said many times on many broadcasts, my position on gun control has been stated clearly. I'll repeat it here. The Constitution of the United States was written so that if the government became tyrannical, that we could defend ourselves. So therefore, when it comes to the matter of controlling the weapons, I am not in favor of taking the weapons away from the average U.S. citizen. I am believing that how those guns are maintained. I do not support, as Mr. Barone has just said, the utilization of smart weapons, because if someone breaks in your house and you can't use the gun because it's coded for the person's hand who's not there, now I've got a dead spouse. So I do believe that the gun laws that are on the books need to be more enforced. I also believe that if you are not able to be properly trained on how to utilize certain firepower, then you cannot be licensed to own it. I believe that all weapons should be licensed no matter who owns them. I do not believe in a gun registry, but I do believe that certain firepower should not be in the hands of those who do not know how to effectively utilize it, be a custodian of it, and if you utilize that firepower in the defense of your home, your property, or your family, that federal law should first try to defend you before they try to convict you and try to paint you as being a rebel against the United States. I will not disarm the American people. I am a gun owner, I'm an avid shooter, and I'm a responsible gun owner, and I will not penalize responsible citizens for being responsible with their weapons.
As per our rules, because you referenced Mr. Thomas in your answer, Mr. Thomas will now get 30 seconds to respond.
Well, basically, that is incorrect. If you have a smart gun in your home, it can be registered to anybody in the house. In other words, it could work for the mother or the father in the house. So it's a smart gun. It can be programmed to work. The object of smart guns is to protect the community from someone that is out to do no good with a stolen gun. If it can't work, it can't harm anyone in the community.
Thank you. And now to Mr. Dionisio for his position on gun control.
I've been saying consistently for 10 years that we need common sense controls and not confiscation. Guns deter rape, robbery, and murder and terrorism. Anytime you're perceived to be more vulnerable, your probability of being attacked skyrockets. There's over 200,000 rapes that are obstructed and stopped because women own guns. I really am quite disturbed that the President of the United States and the media will use a child's death for emotional leverage to take away the right of American citizens to protect themselves. Smart gun technology will be implemented over a 5-year period first and then 10 years. There's some serious concerns. RDIF and fingerprinting is not consistent 70% of the time right now, and other technologies it doesn't work. Americans cannot be the guinea pigs. If someone comes into their home and they're not able to use the gun, that's a real problem. But for location purposes, it's an incredibly good idea. We need to embed chips into the handles so that we can locate after firing so they can't be thrown away. Authorization is really the issue when it comes to smart gun technology. And authorization also can be a real problem because if the person who authorizes it in there, you have to have sub-authorizations for the family. It goes on and on and on. I've been a testament to the fact that Washington, D.C. had the highest gun control laws in America and was sadly coined the murder capital of America. Thank you.
And now, candidate Kiddington, please share with us your position on gun control.
I think it's not working. Yeah, it's not working. Oh, okay. Yes, I'm a Republican, not funded by the gun lobby, Hillary. No, I'm a former member of the NRA. I was born in the same small town as the Smith & Wesson, so I do not support gun control at all. I do believe in controlling criminals. I think you should have school security, like a long time ago. I mean, already. How many shootings do we have to have before you get around to implementing school security? I don't approve of the smart weapons concerning guns because right now people have cars that can drive themselves and people are already hacking into those cars, stopping the car, preventing it from being operational. You have people overriding other people's systems. So smart weapons do not work. And as far as mental health background, that is questionable because a person could have a good day, a bad day, and get reported and then have their Second Amendment right taken away from them. I think that's unfair and unjust because they may be in danger, or maybe they're falling apart because someone is stalking them and they've been a victim before, and someone judges them unstable, and all of a sudden their right to purchase a gun is taken away from them when they need that gun, more than ever. So I am a Republican. I'm not sponsored by the gun lobby, but I am absolutely pro-gun all the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Now to you, Mr. Smith, your position on gun control.
Yes, I'm sure some of you know about the libertarian position on gun control. So we would be the political party that says that you are sovereign. Each individual in the United States is sovereign, not the government over you. So the libertarians believe that we make each individual human being, each sovereign citizen, makes their own choice, not the government. That the government has no right to impose some level of control over you when it comes to a personal decision like that. So we believe that each of you is just as equal as any other person in the government or in state or local government, federal government. And I would point out that Switzerland allows and even requires their citizens to own guns, be trained in weapons. And you know, why do we think that in a planet with billions of people that somehow, you know, taking away guns or reducing the your rights to own guns is going to make the world safer? What we need is a more peaceful world, a world that respects freedom and liberty. That's the way we make the world safer, by building a better world. So it's your choice. Our Libertarian Party will stand behind you, whatever your choice about guns. But don't, you know, the government is not superior to you. They should not take away your guns.
Thank you, sir. Now to candidate Wheelock, your gun control position.
My position after studying the Constitution is, if you read the words, it is the citizens have the right to bear arms in defense of the nation in a well-regulated militia. That is the public version of it. That is not your individual right to do that. But, having said that, the Declaration of Independence gives you that individual right, a God-given right to own guns if you like. Now, and also, in all the problems, it is not the gun. It is the people who wield the guns. It is, we need to address the issues that cause people to go to the guns. Okay? We need reasonable regulations at a minimum level, so it does not infringe upon the right of an individual to defend themselves, to carry a concealed weapon. And I will also add, open carry is a little scary for most citizens. When you see someone walking around a gun, it makes most people nervous. And so, yes, you have a right, but you do not have a need to do that in America. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next candidate, your position on gun control.
As you know, I'm a Green Party person. We believe in nonviolence, so what I've heard so far is painful for me. Let's remember the Constitution was written where maybe 15 of the people in here weren't considered citizens. So the whole approach and mentality, I am challenging all of us to relook at it. Again, since 1945, our species could annihilate itself. Who really needs a gun? Who really needs a gun right now? With the level of sophistication, with security, with cameras, sensors, there's a way to protect yourself and your home without a gun. So I'd like to challenge folks to relook at that, the militia bit of it. The second thing is, it is a broken system. There's no control, because last year over 2,000 black folks got shot by police. Something's wrong. I'm asking each of us to really look at gun control in the fullness as Americans. Our nation has not been effective in creating a mindset of peace. Our party has 4 pillars: ecological wisdom, nonviolence, social justice, and grassroots democracy. I'm sure out of all the parties in the US, we are the party with the least amount of gun ownership. And I'm proud to say that. I'm anti-gun. I'm pro-peace.
Candidate Kinnison.
Well, as I am the presidential candidate of a constitutional political party, obviously we believe in the specific language of the Constitution, which is, quite frankly, shall not be infringed. And that's basically as complicated as our position gets on gun ownership. You have the constitutional right. Just because people abuse a constitutional right does not necessarily mean it's an invalid right. People abuse freedom of speech. People abuse freedom of religion. At what point do we draw the line and say, it doesn't matter if you agree with it, it's your right? We don't draw the line at the Second Amendment, that's for sure. We really, having a gun problem is the way that this situation gets spun in the media. It's part of the political narrative in this country. It's a divisive issue, one of many used to keep us separated and opposed against one another. What we have in this country is not so much a gun problem. We have a crime problem. We have a culture problem. And we most certainly have a respect for human life problem. Take away the guns. As long as we continue to play into this divide and conquer strategy of pointing fists of anger at one another, it doesn't matter if the guns are here or not. People will just use something else. We've got to come together.
Thank you, sir. And now Dr. Khan for your gun control position.
Thank you. In many ways, I think that taking a position about gun control is arguing about symptoms and not looking deeper. I think that America has a problem with violence. We have too much violence here at home, and we export too much violence around the world. That doesn't mean there aren't some common sense things that can be done about addressing violence in America. I think a focus on gun safety would make a lot of sense. I also think we need to just look deeper. There is institutional violence in this country. It's certainly in the criminal justice system. It's certainly in the for-profit prison system. And it just expands out in those networks of people that are working in those systems, let alone folks that are suffering because of the violence within those systems. I think we need to look at institutions. I think we need to look at what are we doing in our schools to help people learn how to work together and not beat up on each other in all the ways that that means. It's the same thing with domestic violence. We need to look at what are the ways in which we can do something about domestic violence. And the final thing I want to say is that there's no trust in America. One study says that only 19% of Americans trust their government to do the right thing. There's no trust, no faith in our government, and until we start creating agencies and departments that deliver results, we can't do much about building trust and dealing with violence.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. And now we will begin with candidate Johnson for our next question. Please express to us your views on our present terrorism issues as related to our immigration issues affecting our country today.
Thank you, great question. There are two answers or two perspectives we have to take when we talk about terrorism. There is what we call global terrorism that I've heard spoken about at this table, where we're talking about people coming from other countries who, for whatever reason, decide to want to enact acts of terrorism within our borders. And then we have to acknowledge we have domestic terrorism. And domestic terrorism is most of the time swept under the rug as a lone shooter or a lone wolf, but we've got a problem overseas. As far as the immigration piece, I think that I would take that word and pack it up and put it in the parking lot, because it is not immigration that is tied into the terrorism domestically or globally that we're seeing. People who immigrate to this country, legally or illegally, have come here for opportunity. Or, if I would say, refugees are a different story. Those people coming out of war-torn situations globally, whether they're running from oppression, running from an implosion of their society, who come to the United States, sometimes bring those same ideals with them. And they may disagree with what happened at home, but they may really disagree with what's going on here. Not to mention, there are those undesirables who sneak in under the radar. I believe that this country should not only utilize its resources to, if it can, reasonably identify those terrorist aspects globally and prevent them from entering this country. However, in the face of a global catastrophe, where people are needing a place to stay, live, eat, and sleep, the United States should facilitate that in their neighborhood first, and if there is no neighborhood, provide them a shelter in this country. Then address its own internal domestic terrorism, whether it be at the hands of the police or individuals who become sensitized and identify with ISIS, ISIL, and other places like other people like that.
Thank you, Candidate Johnson. Candidate Dionisio, your thoughts on our present terrorism situation as related to our immigration issues in this country?
Thank you, Jackie. Ladies and gentlemen, we've made no emotional, social, economic, or financial recovery since 9/11 in this country. Immigration is now tied into subjects of refugees and terrorism, bigotry, emotional immaturity, racism, and discrimination. These are not characteristics of leadership. America needs leadership. The void that we've had since really 2000, just in the economy alone, has been so disrupted. And then we have 9/11. Those two impacts have devastated us. I've developed a strategic terrorist defensive program. It's the only solution that's been offered of all the candidates in the Republican, Democratic, and any party to eradicate terrorism, which can save hundreds of thousands of lives and perhaps millions over time. We need to establish global leadership in the area to fight this. And it has nothing to do with immigration.
Thank you, sir. Candidate Kiddington, your thoughts on our present terrorism issues as related to immigration in this country?
Well, I think the terrorism issue is a separate issue from the immigration issue. I do believe, as I said earlier, turning back the illegals and the refugees, take care of them where they are, work with the Latin American governments where they are, the refugees coming over, work with them overseas instead of bringing them into this country, because our country is not in a good condition right now as far as budget, as far as getting benefits to our existing communities and taking care of our existing people. With 47% now in poverty, that's almost half of America. So we really have to deal with our issues, first of all. And also, I think part of winning the war on terrorism is to have a strong president that loves this country, that's committed to this country, that stands for this country without apologies and without excuses. Because if you have excuses for where you are, people are going to go look for strength, and they're going to say, hey, ISIS, and they're going to go over there and say, well, those are people fighting for something, whereas America, everyone's apologizing for everything. So I think having a strong leader that loves this country and stands up for it is one of the key factors to preventing domestic terrorism, giving people an identity that this is a country with borders, this is America. It gives them that distinction. And that's what's needed as far as combating terrorism. That's one of the things needed, besides a great military strategy and all of those things, which I'm more than willing to do even right now. If Obama would like to resign and, give me the position, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. We move on now to Candidate Smith. Your views on our present terrorism issues as related to immigration.
Thank you. And as always, I'm so appreciative of having this forum and having an audience to talk about issues that have plagued mankind forever. So my question is, we increasingly are aware that colonialism, apartheid, do not work. They have failed us for centuries, and now in the age of the internet, we're seeing this tragedy, this global tragedy that we have engaged in for centuries. So what I want to talk about is how do we improve that? Communication, diversity, inclusion, a pluralistic society. We are funding our own demise when we fund dictators, theocracies, Islamic states around the world. What are we doing? We're funding our own destruction. We should be insisting we're the land of freedom and the First Amendment and freedom and liberty. when we deal with these foreign governments, this is the policy that we need to be upholding. We're not going to deal with you anymore if you're going to continue your oppression that you've done for centuries. That's what they uphold in the old world. This is the new world. We had an American Revolution here, a libertarian revolution. Let's take that around the world and let's make it so here at home. Because we still, the Confederacy, that was about colonial oppression. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Wheelock.
Okay, terrorism as entailed in immigration basically is the threat that a person may slip in the immigration system to terrorize America from a bad point. That is not the direct issue. The biggest thing is terrorism worldwide is causing a refugee crisis, a migration of people away from terrorism. And we need to vet the individuals coming in so they are either immigrants or they are just refugees. And if they are refugees, we need to bring them in, we need to send them back, and then we need to export freedom and individual rights so they can take their countries back and not worry about coming back to America unless they want to immigrate and become part of the American ideal. We need to bring them the freedom and individual rights that we have. That is why they want to immigrate here, but as it is with terrorism right now, they are refugees from terrorism and is mixed in calling it immigration.
Thank you, sir. Our next candidate. Your views on our present terrorism situation, our present terrorism issues in this country as they're related to immigration.
I agree with which of the candidates said they're very separate. Also, Mr. Smith, you can come with me to Washington. Imperialism is the issue. If you look at every situation where folks are fleeing as refugees, it's about a corporate profit and some level of negativity of ripping off somebody. That's the basic. Again, as you know, I'm against capitalism. The second thing is that globally, our nation has not been a peacemaker, it's been a profit maker, and we must end that. All the wars and famines and crazy stuff is rooted in our nation and other Western nations that created these crises. It doesn't work. And again, since 1945, our species has been able to kill itself. We must end this and be the peace-loving nation we are capable of so our world can save our species.
Thank you. Candidate Keniston.
Without question, terrorism is a huge problem in the world, and it is growing, and it is spreading, and it honestly, at this point, does not matter how many bombs we drop, how many troops we send in to Iraq, to Syria, to these affected regions where ISIS and other huge terrorist movements have basically overtaken the majority of local government. It's not a solution, and it's not sustainable. We as the United States cannot have our military running around destroying every saber-rattling third world country who has a problem with us. It doesn't do anything to help us in the long run. I mean, I don't care how many times you go in and you build schools and you build churches and you build roads and wells and communities. When we're responsible for the deaths of parents and sons and daughters, husbands and wives, they'll never forgive us for that. It doesn't matter what you try to do, you cannot take that away. And the simple fact is, we don't have to be the nation that goes in to clean up that mess. It was there before we got there. We didn't do anything to help it. And we certainly haven't done anything in our removal from that situation to make it any better. So empower the people who live there to do it.
That is your time. Thank you. And we will get a final answer now from Dr. Khan.
Thank you. These are difficult questions. The relationship of terrorism, foreign policy, what our military is asked to do and does do, and immigration. There is no simple answer. It's a complicated situation. I've published a framework for war and peace building in the 21st century, and I'm going to spend a little bit of that time talking about it. I believe we need to distinguish between the purpose of our military, which is to defeat evil and protect the homeland, with our foreign policy, and I believe the purpose of foreign policy is peace building. I believe we need to be strong to build peace, so I want the strongest military on the planet. We also need to be strong at home, and we're not. The spirit of America is strong. The state of our union is fragile. I do not believe, building peace does not mean being stupid. You can't sweet-talk a bully. You can't negotiate with psychopaths and terrorists that use beheadings and rape and starvation as a tactic of war. We can make foreign policy decisions that have been wiser than the ones we've made in the past. We have made stupid decisions. 8 weeks after we invaded Iraq, we fired 85,000 teachers, doctors, nurses, and engineers. And a week later, we fired the entire Iraqi army of 700,000 people, creating almost 1 million people that hate us. So we need to be wiser, tilt Washington, D.C. towards peace building, and start there.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. For our next question, we will begin.
Do I get to answer that one?
I did start with you. Candidates, I need like a little light or some kind of assistance here. Yes, please, by all means, Candidate Thomas, answer the question.
Basically, when it comes to immigration, I believe there's a lot of contradictions that come into play. We are living in what I call the endowment effect. Basically, we believe that our country is still the best country in the world when in a lot of aspects we've become second rate in a lot of aspects. And I believe that it started with Manifest Destiny from the Europeans. They came over and decided that this was their country. And imagine, okay, somebody coming into your house and kicking you out your house and then changing the locks, and then when you come back to your house, you need the key and you ain't got a key to get in your house. So basically, I believe this country is what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be the land of the free. Now, I believe that the immigrants are actually a blessing in disguise. There's a lot of work that has to be done in this country. Our infrastructure is in shambles. I mean, you're talking about highways need to be fixed, a whole rail system from West Coast to East Coast needs to be fixed. And America has got to the point where we are just protesting, and basically we're procrastinating right now. We don't want to do the work that's necessary to really uplift this country where it needs to be again. So I believe that we need to actually put the immigrants to work in a fair way where it doesn't, where it's not slavery. We're not looking for slavery, we're looking for a work program, and I believe that they will be more than willing to help America rebuild.
Thank you. And we have heard from all of the candidates on that question, correct? We will now begin with Candidate Dionisio for our next question. What plans do you have to make sure all of our U.S. military veterans once again receive the care they have earned by their service to our country?
That's an outstanding question. First of all, no veteran is going to wait in line if I'm President of the United States to get health care. They can go to any hospital anywhere in the country and be taken care of. I think it's an atrocity when I think about my father who rose up from the inner city streets of South Boston to become the Director of Intelligence for the United States Coast Guard. My support of the Central Intelligence Agency, having worked with 75 countries around the world, looking at how U.S. treats its veterans, it's a disgrace. Ladies and gentlemen, as part of my healthcare program, we need to establish new state-of-the-art facilities. And our veterans need to be participants in that. And I find it very disgraceful that we have a leading candidate in the Republican Party that has mocked our POWs. I stood at Bethesda Naval Hospital watching POWs come home when I was a small child. And when I heard these comments, it's time not to overlook bigotry, racism, discrimination. Thank you.
Candidate Kiddington, you are a veteran. What are your plans to make sure that all military veterans will be given the care that they have earned?
Well, I will be keeping the Veterans Affairs, of course, and the VA hospitals. I won't require, I know some candidates have mentioned, other candidates have mentioned turning them over to the public system. I would not do that. That's always the option. Free market system is always an option. So you don't need to do a government program for what already exists. I would increase the number and quality of doctors in the VA system for veterans to see. That would speed up their appointment times. That would guarantee that they would get the care that they need with professional doctors. And, you know, there are several other things as well, overhauling making sure veterans have jobs, making sure veterans transition. There's a whole slew of things, which is on my website, kiddington2016.com, if you want to take a look at it. But that's generally it. Yeah. Thank you.
Candidate Smith, your plans for our military veterans and receiving the medical care that they have earned through service to our country.
Yes, thank you very much. And such an important question about how any government, the most powerful government of the world, the United States, or how does that, translate when someone has volunteered to, presumably volunteered to help defend the nation. I would point to the Obamacare, where that system is broken. And I would say that it's very difficult to have a national health care system, and the veterans have suffered from that. So it's not only the treatment for medical conditions, but also treatment for opportunity in education and housing, that we should reach out to our veterans and make sure that they're not homeless, that they have educational opportunity, and just to invest more in the ways to communicate health care and medical care, and find out how we can serve the veterans wherever they are. And presumably if that gets better, then we can all benefit from that, because I live in a community that has community health care. They call it the university health care, where the local community in the county and the medical school actually combine, and so that everyone is served, not just veterans. And I think that by learning how to serve veterans, we can learn how to serve the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Candidate Wheelock.
Okay, as a veteran, I am one of the veterans that all the issues that have been brought forth of the falling short of the VA care system have happened physically to me. Okay? And I do believe we need to take care of our veterans. If you serve, you have earned that right to health care, especially if you are injured in combat or in service. You need to have the VA care. Now, if we have universal health care, people who have retired or gotten out of the military can go to private or public health care, and they also have the choice to go to the VA care if they want. But we must take care of the veterans who serve and protect us and have laid down their lives for us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Your plans for medical care for our veterans.
To honor, respect, and promote their well-being, fully fund the VA, make sure everyone gets the benefits that have been mentioned: education, housing, health, physical, and mental. I would add, ensuring that there's an advocate, that every veteran has an advocate to see them from sign up to death. That if you have served, we have to make sure your full well-being is taken care of.
Thank you very much. Candidate Keniston.
And for the record, I didn't need any time to consider this one. First thing you need to understand about veterans benefits is that they are earned benefits. They are not welfare.
Yes.
There is a contract between a military member and the United States government for his care for any injuries sustained as a result of his service. It's a contract. And the failure to provide what was promised is a breach of contract, a breach of good faith by our federal government. I hear people talk about universal health care and what a great idea it would be if the government was in charge of health care. Ask a veteran how that works. It's not what it sounds like, folks. When you put people in control of your health care, bureaucrats decide what you get. Education, same thing. You want to know how universal education or government-run education works? Ask a veteran who's trying to get his GI Bill benefits how well that works. Veterans housing, want the government to control housing? Ask a homeless veteran how that works. Or ask a Native American how depending on the government for care works out for you. You cannot depend upon the federal government to take care of you. It sounds good, but it doesn't work. Accountability is the number one thing. As President of the United States, the VA falls under my purview personally. I will own it, I will be accountable, and I will make sure my brothers and sisters get taken care of.
Dr. Khan.
Thank you. I believe the failure of our VA healthcare and benefit system is the shame of America. There are 100 VA facilities under criminal investigation for failure to provide adequate health care of all kinds. Physical health care, mental health care, 100 facilities under criminal investigation. So I think what's missing is integrity of the system. There is something truly psychologically dysfunctional about what's going on in our VA's healthcare systems. So I think that we need to, I would send in management consulting teams headed by 2 veterans and a bunch of others, folks, into every single VA healthcare facility in the country to figure out what needs to be done next. Some of these are utter failures, and the dishonesty it's throughout the culture of that hospital. I've published 3 articles about the VA. I've published an article on a plan to transform the Veterans Affairs Department. I've published an article on veteran suicide and what's called moral injury now, when we push veterans away from us, so few serve, that we as a nation don't want to hear what it means to be in war, to be a warrior, to come back and talk about what their experience has been. $17 billion, that's my estimate of what it will take to fix the VA system in this country and give veterans the services they deserve.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. Candidate Thomas.
Basically, I believe if you wear the uniform, you wore the uniform, when you come home, you should be treated as a hero. Basically, we in the military, and most of us on this panel has been in the military, and I believe if you want to become the president and wear the hat as commander-in-chief, that I believe that should be the #1 requirement. When we're in the military, we are 20 years ahead of where the civilian life is at. So when we come home, it's basically a culture shock. So we have to understand what the military goes through. We have to understand the situation they're in, and we have to basically extend community relationship to that settler that's coming back home, that soldier that's coming back home, that airman, and basically open up the city, open up the plans that's available to them, the benefits that's available to them, and treat them like a hero, because they truly are. Some gave their life, and some of them gave all their time to protect this country, so we should treat them with respect.
Candidate Johnson.
I have to agree with co-candidate Thomas that you have not worn the uniform, and I cannot allow you in good faith to be my commander-in-chief. If you have never been to war,
Stop it.
then you cannot command me. However, that is built into the presidency, and I'll say it here that all of the candidates that are running right now in the public sector, none of them have served in the military and have avoided military service, and so have their families. Yet they're quick to talk about boots on the ground. I have a problem with that. As far as those of us who are returning, to civilian life, as your president, I would enact a one-year health program for all service members returning. It is a mandatory program that we would not only, it's not the VA where you go and check it out and you go and find out, because I've been there, I've worked there, and I've been a patient there. And as one of the other candidates said, it's deplorable. The culture is horrible. This program would track you for 1 year to make sure that you receive the adequate mental and physical medical help that you deserve, free of charge. Going into these, and that goes to any hospital, not just the VA, and it would be exempt, funded by the government. VAs are staffed right now by folks who are on assignments for civil service. They're not staffed by real doctors who care. Those doors need to be open for those folks. Remove the VA from the civil service program, because most of those folks are sitting on time, regulatory oversight for benefit administration. And I want states to pick up the tab for National Guard service members returning, since we're now sending National Guards into combat.
That is your time. Thank you, sir.
So do we get to respond to something as insulting as that?
He did not refer to you by name, therefore, as per our rules, there is no rebuttal from any candidate unless they are specifically referred to in the answer.
Well, they referred to us because we had not served, so I think that qualifies. Wouldn't you, Dr.
He has
Khan?
to say by name.
Dr. Khan, would you not agree?
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, we both
The
agree.
rules state that if you are referred to by name, any candidate who is referred to by name has a chance to respond. No names were referred to, no one was pointed out, therefore we will move on to our next question, which candidate Kiddington will answer first for us. Give us your thoughts on our national debt and how you would resolve it.
On our national debt, I would like to say, well, first, I'm proud to be a veteran. And you have to understand, we take this seriously. When something happens overseas, I mean, we cry. It doesn't matter how long we've been out of the service. Being commander-in-chief, we need someone that values the military. People reach out to me because they know that I was one of those that answered military emergency calls for help at 3 a.m. Hillary did not answer for Benghazi. I have people who want to support me based on Benghazi, of course, and then some other people call me Benghazi Barbie, but that's another issue. But we take this seriously. Being commander-in-chief, and it's people's blood. It's their sons and daughters. It's not some miscellaneous something. It's not oil overseas. These are people's lives. These are Americans. And that's what we stand for, and it should be a requirement in being commander-in-chief to be in the military, to know how to take responsibility for people's lives instead of going to bed, for crying out loud. You don't sit there and ignore when someone's calling you for help when you're ambassadors overseas and everything else.
So we do take this seriously. Being a veteran is serious. Our military is very serious, and fighting for their lives and maintaining their lives is very serious. Having a responsible person take the presidency is very serious. On the national debt, as I said, I would reduce big government, cut bureaucracy, take the aim there, not take out the poverty programs. I disagree with the Republicans on wiping out the poverty programs, and I disagree on all the freebies, but reduction of government, reduction of bureaucracy, that's one of the key things that I will do as far as bringing down the debt. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There are concerns about time right now. It's 8:38 at this time. This will be our final question, and then we will allow for closing statements. So our next candidate, your thoughts on our national debt and what you would do to reduce it.
Okay, thank you very much. And I know that many people feel very strongly when they see $1 trillion rung up, or 15 trillion, or 20 trillion, or whatever that figure is. It's like, you know, it's something we cannot get a handle on. And as a libertarian, I'm going to take a unique position, because I'm sure libertarians would say, you know, that we don't need the national debt, we don't need the government, or we don't need any of these problems. But the fact is, if there's something that we can collectively go together to invest in, to spend money on, to improve the future of mankind, to improve our own future for that, our children, our families, then of course we should consider, you know, that debt. I think the biggest issue that many people feel is that we just squander money, we increase programs without thinking of the long-term consequences, and thinking that, you know, how are we going to get this in control? Basically, by more communication, by freedom and liberty, by reaching out to the world community, and by taking control of these banks that have so much, individual bankers have so much power over the money, banking, and credit systems. If they're going to come and ask us to bail them out, that's your money, then we should be included at the beginning of those decisions about how that money is being lent. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Candidate Willock, your thoughts on our national debt.
Okay, as far as the national debt and a resolution of that debt, I think everyone in here would agree that with a Republican or a Democrat in office, we will never satisfy that national debt. They are going to increase it and build it larger, per se, all the time. With an independent in the White House, we can cut the fraud, waste, and abuse. We can balance the budget because we are not beholden to the two parties that are causing the national debt. But you have to balance the budget and to be able to pay down the debt. So we need a balanced budget, and we need to cut fraud, waste, and abuse, and remove a Republican or a Democrat from the White House.
Thank you, sir. Your thoughts on our national debt.
I concur with the last presidential candidate. Our party believes in grassroots democracy. I believe that every American should be a shareholder within their community. Every community must have control of water, food, health care, child care, anything that's going to support building a better community, thus we build a better nation. The two corporate funded parties could never end the debt because, as he said, they're beholden. So I agree strongly.
Thank you. Candidate Keniston.
Interesting side note. I asked a question earlier about how well we can work with other people who are different from us. I mean, the four of us have been down here passing one microphone back and forth all night. We don't fight over it.
No issues.
And we don't trash talk each other.
No, ma'am. All right. National debt. Let me sum this up for you real quickly. In the last 5 years, the top 200 politically donating companies have donated over $5.8 billion. In return, they have received over $4.4 trillion in corporate welfare, tax breaks, and other rewards. That's not Republicans, that's not Democrats, that's both of them working together to pass budget bills through Congress signed by the president. They don't work for you. And you wonder why the national debt is as bad as it is? That's why. We argue about, oh, there's funding for amnesty, oh, there's funding for education, oh, there's funding for the military, there's funding for the VA. The majority of the money is not going to any of those places. It's going back in the pockets of the people who donated to their campaigns. That's what's got to stop. And that's what every member of this panel is committed to stopping. Because we're not major party candidates. We're not taking their money. We're not playing their game. We're going to end it. And I have said before, it's in my platform, I will veto any piece of legislation that lands on my desk that contains any kind of the pork barrel rewards.
Thank you.
And I'll put it on the White House website for you to see it.
Dr. Khan.
Thank you. It's a matter of priorities. My priority is to put people to work the day I get into the White House. So I think that we have to talk about finding and creating 2 to 3 million new jobs, well-paying jobs with benefits, full-time jobs, starting the first year that I'm president or any of us are president. So my priority is jobs, 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 put people back to work. And we all have these grand designs about 21st century infrastructure and transitioning to green energy. That is not going to happen. It'll take time to do that. It doesn't happen on day one. I have a plan to hire 200,000 teachers to put 4-year-olds into preschool. I want to hire 300,000 community residents to help us transition to community policing and support the people that have been subjected to horrible circumstances in our criminal justice system. I have a plan to create 200 extra slots in AmeriCorps and Job Corps, jobs that young people can take however far they got in school. I have plans to hire 100,000 vets to help vets. And I think that we just need to start putting people back to work from day one. There is a lot of pain out there. There is real hunger, homelessness, poverty. Deal with those issues first, and then use tax reform to reduce the national debt.
Thank you. Candidate Thomas.
Well, I believe there's a lot of corruption in Washington, and we need somebody in Washington who's not a part of the corruption. Right now, well, I'm gonna break it down to you like this. From George Washington to George Bush Sr., America only accumulated $1 trillion in debt. But somehow between George Bush Sr. and George Bush Jr., that debt had increased to $10 trillion. And then the Obama administration has increased to $18.9 trillion and counting. We have trade deficits of $40 billion. And I do disagree with, well, I agree with Dr. Khan, but I disagree with the number. I think we need to create more than a few million jobs. I'm thinking like more 25 million jobs or 30 million jobs. And I believe that there's one common denominator that can take us out of this situation, which I believe is travel. Right now, moving products to market, if we can move products to market faster, I believe that's going to save us money. We need to stop spending money on these unnecessary wars. Even though we are in the military and we will send people to protect this country, we can all say that we don't really want to go out there and fight. We like liberty, and liberty calls more to fighting, so, but if we have to, put people in harm's way, then we will. Other than that, you look at outsourcing and manufacturing as other issues that we can talk about to decrease the debt.
That is your time. Dr. Khan, would you like your 30 seconds rebuttal time?
Never like my 30 seconds. Go. Thank you. So I did say 25 million new jobs in my introduction, and it's 2 to 3 million new jobs that we need every year for 10 years. Put that aside. I know there are people on this panel that believe that the only criteria for becoming president is that one has served in the military. And I think that is so dangerous. It's insulting, it's vaguely sexist. Thank you. There are so many, every person up here can tell you what their criteria is, and it's not always leading people in war.
As
Thank
one
you,
military.
Dr. Khan. And now candidate Johnson, your
Thank you,
thoughts on the
sister.
debt.
With regards to the national debt, most of us forget that when we came into the Obama first administration, that we came into that administration in terrible shape. And by the end of his first administration, we had a surplus that was squandered by another political party whose name I shall not call.
Say their name.
As the president, we must work to control government spending on the programs, and I've heard fraud, waste, and abuse, and I agree. But we should also enact a periodic program to review and target for elimination those programs that continue to fly under the radar and consume mass amounts of money without any question. While it's unrealistic to eliminate a national debt to zero, because that's part of working in a business, we can eliminate tax breaks for multinational corporations like GE that I worked for that made more money than God and paid zero in taxes. We also have to have the establishment of a federal intern-to-work program for college grads and for high school students, where I've seen them come into these corporations, intern, go to college with a guaranteed job when they came back in that particular discipline. And last but not least, we also would have to take a look at some of these free trade agreements that have been signed into practice. They're doing nothing more but driving us deeper into debt. As your president, that is how I will attack the national deficit. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Dionisio.
Yes, I'm the only candidate running in this race that has will make a commitment to eradicate the deficit. And you'll do that by growing the economy instead of 1.5% to 2% to 6%, institute an industrial policy. We've never had one in the United States. Enacting what's called Transcom I've developed, which is the Transnational Commerce Act. It's going to replace both NAFTA and TPP, which is one of the worst trade agreements in U.S. history. We're going to repatriate $4 trillion. It's sitting over in offshore bank accounts. We're not going to tax that money. Some are proposing 10%, blah, blah, blah. We're going to allow that money back. We don't need double, triple taxation. But that money has to be invested in America. And just like the flat tax is a complete economic disaster. People who are proposing this know nothing about the global economy. What we need to do is have a 3-tier system in the tax, IRS reformation, and that includes the top 1%. The only way that we're going to be giving tax credits there is if they invest in capital equipment and education and healthcare, and that goes for all aspects of the tax code. So both individuals as well as corporations. The other thing, we're going to cut healthcare costs by 30% by instituting the United Healthcare Act, and global debt ratios that are all-time high. So we're really pending on a global recession right now that has to be stopped. We need leadership right now, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
That is your time. Thank you. And now we will have closing statements. In order that we can finish close to being on time, we will give you 45 seconds each, if that is okay. And we will begin with candidate Wheelock and go to his right.
Okay, basically what we're looking at here is we need to address the issues head on, okay? A politician or anyone should be able to answer the question, not talk around the subject, as we've all done here tonight, and the Republicans and Democrats are constantly doing. You have to address the issues of America, of the people, for the people, and by the people, not lead or dictate over them.
Candidate Smith, 45 seconds for you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you every one of you who have come tonight and taken your time, and everyone who's watching tonight on the internet. Thank you so much. Basically, I want to acknowledge a friend of mine that has passed yesterday, who was a co-founder of Veterans for Education Reform. His name is Frank Monreal, and I want to say a prayer for his, or just acknowledge his wife and children, who are such an instrumental part of our San Antonio community. and so much a part of, they were such mentors. Mr. Monreal was such a mentor for me. There's other members of the Veterans for Education Reform. As I said, it was about the First Amendment, and Mr. George Alejo and Mr. Fidel Castillo.
Candidate Kiddington.
Okay,
Thank you, sir. Your final 45 seconds for closing statements.
Big government doesn't work for us. Millions of jobs and business lost. Thousands of Americans now live in cars and tents. We can't afford more political gains. I serve mankind as a minister, and so I've given more success to others than to myself. But I believe in the prosperity of America. I have 4 college degrees, years managing, caregiving, business consulting. In the military on watch, as I said, I answered the 3 a.m. phone call. I've already have done what Hillary failed to do. So if you want a responsible woman for president, caucus Kiddington. I'm older and more mature than Senators Rubio and Cruz that failed to show up for work, that failed to show up for key votes, but I'm far younger and meant for the 21st century than Bernie Sanders. So if you want a responsible president, caucus Kiddington, if you used to go to caucus and you think of yourself as an independent now, go back to that caucus you used to go to and caucus Kiddington.
Thank you.
And I promise you I will look after American interests and American jobs first.
That is your time. Thank you. Candidate Dionisio.
Thank you. I've spent my life tearing down the walls of isolation, bigotry, and hate. Having traveled the world full of confidence and pride in America's spirit and innovation, consistent with leaders like John Kennedy and Ronald Reagan, our next president has to support the greatness of the country which elects them. And that one day can be today. You can be proud knowing that you rose up at such a crucial time in history to have a real voice and to make a difference. Positive global relationships and forward visionary leadership are here if we stand for what is right. United as one nation, and start breaking the chains that are holding us captive from being the very best we can be as individuals and as a nation.
Thank you, sir. Candidate Johnson.
I said it before, I'll say it again. Only we can fix us, period. And I think I speak for everyone up here when I say that. The United States is multicultural, multifaceted. We're a country of ideas and ideals that sometimes clash, but we always tend to work together to get through whatever is confronting us. And right now, what is confronting us is our very well-being. As your president, I would work along with anyone, reach any conclusion, strive to do whatever needs to be done to get the job done, so that we have a world that we can hand over to our children, that they can hand over to their children. As your candidate for presidency, if we could pull an upset to remove those folks who are in power right now who are professional politicians, then I would tell you that right now I would be the person that you should elect. OnlyWeCanFixThis.com, and I'm John Fitzgerald.
Candidate Thomas.
First, I want to thank all the debaters that came to Lake Charles, and hopefully you enjoyed the city. I'd like to thank Ms. Jackie Simeon. I believe that we are at a crucial moment in our history. There are so many issues that affects our position as a top-ranked country. We need to go back to the drawing board and make America appealing to America again. As president, I will reform all the major problems that plagues our nation and create a future that we all can believe in. Thank you. I'm Ferron Thomas, and I'm a candidate for President of the United States of America.
Candidate Khan.
Thank you. Thanks to the organizers and everybody who helped out tonight. Thanks to the audience. Please support independent candidates. Look at our websites, voteforlynn2016.com. And I'm going to close with this. Reinvention is the key, and peacemaking is the heart of today's revolution. Taking to scale our proven solutions, listening to the people's priorities, not paying off political authorities, demanding results from all our agencies, stop funding programs that wander aimlessly, getting the waste out of bureaucracies, giving the savings back to communities. Yes, I have a plan, a 7-track strategy, 30 years in the making, so listen to me. You want to get started, I say, without argument. Building peace requires transforming government.
Thank you, Candidate Keniston.
I want to use my final remarks tonight to address the issue of wasted votes. It's an issue that we all have to deal with as independent and third-party candidates. It's an argument that's often presented to us. I want to talk about the 2012 election, presidential election. 219 Americans could have voted in that election. Were of legal age, registered or unregistered. The final vote count, 58% of the vote was split between President Obama and candidate Romney. 42% of that 219 million people said no, period. Didn't vote. So the actual mandate for the 2012 election was no. With 5% of the popular vote, every candidate's party up here represented with just 5% will compete head to head with the two major parties in 2020.
Thank you, sir. Our final candidate with our final closing arguments,
I'm going to
statements.
continue my brother. We can win. More Americans didn't vote for them. Let's join together. I'd like to invite all of us to set up a peace and health camp at the RNC and DNC because Americans would reject what's going to happen. We can do this. The revolution has begun. We can do it. The Green Party, as you know, represents ecological wisdom, social justice, grassroots economy, and nonviolence. I encourage all of us as citizens to take our nation. We never had it, if you look at the Constitution, but we can take our nation. Join all of us that represent you to move us forward. Stay green.
Thank you, candidates. This has been brought to you by IndependentDebate2016.com. I am Jackie Simeon. We appreciate you staying with us this evening. Vote.
Yes.